Signal Sciences is the industry's first web protection platform that works in any cloud, any container, any platform as a service, and any modern application architecture. The Signal Sciences web protection platform can be deployed in next-generation WAF, RASP, or reverse proxy modes, giving customers ultimate flexibility and coverage. Protect your web applications with Signal Sciences web protection platform. Signal Sciences, protecting applications, connecting teams. For more information, check them out at signalsciences.com/PSW. The average time between being hacked and realizing you've been hacked is 1 year. Can you afford to let an intruder roam your network for that long? Can your company weather the fallout when this comes to light? Black Hills Information Security can find the bad guys in your network and train you to do it yourself. Email consulting@blackhillsinfosec.com to find out how a hunt teaming engagement can help you find a persistent threat in your network. Has your network been breached? Cybereason can help you answer this question. Cybereason products hunt for threats within your network and eliminate them in real time. To Cybereason, real time means within seconds. Founded by former military hackers who don't play by the rules, they've built this experience into their platform. Harness ingenuity and imagination, not just code, to defeat attackers. Cybereason, disrupt the adversary and let the hunt begin. Welcome back, everyone, to Paul's Security Weekly. I want to quickly mention Wild West Hackin' Fest, put on by Black Hills Information Security on October 27th and 28th. And the featured speakers are going to be Larry Pesce and Paul Asadorian.
Yes.
Imagine
and
that.
Others.
And others. Turn the tables right on them. Wild West Hackin' Fest, HACKIN Fest.com. I would like to introduce our special guest for this technical segment on detecting the Empire's DeathStar attack, which sounds weird, like what you don't know what we're going to talk, but it's going to all make sense. Jay LaRosa is here with us, and Jay is from ADP, correct?
Yes.
Welcome, Jay. And Almog is here from Javelin Networks. Almog, welcome back to the show.
Thank you.
So this is going to be kind of a tag team. Let me back up and just set the stage a little bit before we get started. I think that some folks outside of some of our listeners and pen testers, we understand the problem of Active Directory security. Mm-hmm. I've kind of taken it on as my mission to help educate those and make them realize how serious this problem is. And Javelin Networks happened to come about kind of right at that time, and I was like, wow, this is really exciting. So we're doing this series of segments, which I'm excited because it's accomplishing that goal of making people realize that there's a lot of security technologies out there, but really mostly people are abusing Active Directory, and you really don't have insights and tools and controls as to prevent that stuff because it's such a wild beast, so to speak. So now, Jay, you have been using the Javelin Networks tools. Is that correct?
Yeah, so I've been helping these guys for a while with with the technology and looking at how you can leverage this inside of a large enterprise network like ADP, and looking at what that would look like and how how to be successful with with that type of deployment.
Awesome. Yeah, so why don't you tell us a little bit about your experiences with Active Directory security and putting in some of these mitigations and detections.
Gotcha. Yeah, I mean, I think when you think about Active Directory and you think about the attacks that we're facing on a regular basis, it's it is the Wild West, and a lot of people don't understand the problems that come with a giant information store like this. And when attackers jump on a network, they're not running around just moving laterally, stealing files, in collecting up data and be able to run off with. They've got to be able to come up with some sort of a game plan, and you're not typically going to see some sort of a criminal bashing through your network and being noisy. They're pretty stealthy as they're looking to be able to find what they're trying to get their hands on. And
yeah, so Jay, essentially they need a map, right? And without a map, they've got to resort to Nmap and other tool, and those are noisy. So they go more stealthily to get that map from Active Directory.
Yeah, and I mean, I wouldn't even say that it's so much stealthy as much as it is kind of normal access for as far as Active Directory is concerned. I mean, it's designed to be there to answer query requests around resources and help point people to where specific things live inside of the infrastructure. And that's a gold mine. It's a treasure trove of information for criminals. And really, most every company out there uses Active Directory. It's a critical resource. Most organizations just can't survive without it. And when you think about the domain admin credentials that live inside of Active Directory, that really is the keys to be able to unlock any resource, within an organization. So, criminals are highly motivated to be able to find those credentials and be able to compromise those, so they can make their way through the organization quickly, and accomplish their actions on the objectives, and get out, right?
Absolutely.
So, when we look at this kind of stuff, there's usually three phases that the criminals are moving through. There's the initial compromise, and this is pretty easy nowadays. Most of the attacks that we see across large organizations are through phishing, and unfortunately the weakness inside of every organization is really the people, and the bad guys know this. And the minute that they can find just one person to click on a link or open one of these malicious documents, it's game over. And the criminals are jumping on that and setting up a pretty sophisticated back channel of communication mechanisms, so that they can maintain persistence and they can begin reconnaissance. And that's really where Active Directory comes into play.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and specifically in your organization, Jay, I'm sure you see a lot of attacks given the level of information that you're carrying, not just for yourselves, but probably most of the other companies in the country, maybe even the world.
Yep. Yeah. I mean, and the crazy thing about our organization is, we deal with a lot of external companies as well. So I hear a lot of stories about not such great things, and you see a lot of stuff showing up on your door every day. Fortunately, we've got great tools to be able to help us get visibility, and working with vendors, like these guys, to be able to help figure out how do we go down the path of really making sure that Active Directory is secure. That post exfiltration phase is game over, and we don't want to be have to be having to deal with that phase of these attacks. We want to deal with
doesn't DLP help with those? Sorry,
couldn't even say that with a straight face.
Nope.
That's a common misnomer, unfortunately, as you cross the industry. And DLP is a great tool for broken business process, but when you're looking at reconnaissance and looking for lateral movement inside of an organization, we think about you made a joke earlier about Nmap, and you think about organizations use sinkholing a lot, and use we set up dummy networks inside of areas of our network that are kind of black hole. Mm-hmm. We look for people who are in there probing and scanning, but that's not exactly the best way to be able to go about finding bad guys. You find a lot of network administrators who are just trying to figure out the network, and new people who are trying to learn the organizations. You're not really finding adversaries. But when you think about a tool like Javelin, and you think about their ability to be able to allow us to kind of apply mask over Active Directory, and in a way sinkhole Active Directory, and give us that ability to be able to detect people who are now starting to probe around and touch things that don't really exist inside of the environment, but it's early warning signs to us that someone is spending time reconning the environment and trying to find things that would be interesting, and beginning to try and go to the next level and try to touch things and try to find a way to be able to get domain admin privileges. It's a great a great way for you to start to kind of turn that age old used technique into something that's a lot more useful. Because we all know, once an attacker gets on your network and they're starting to probe around, the tools that exist inside of your infrastructure are the tools that they're going to use against you, right? Mm-hmm. They're going to use NSLookup to enumerate all the domain controllers. They're going to use Active Directory to find the groups of users that are inside of your organization that have high levels of privileges.
Now, Jay, this is something that you and I and Larry and others, on the show know. How did you convince your management that this was in fact a problem? Some of the things we've discussed about being able to detect attackers, being able to having them use the tools, Active Directory being the primary target. How did you communicate that to your management?
I mean, it's really, we're really using threat modeling to be able to help demonstrate and show the the executives here how criminals are essentially setting themselves up and where they're targeting, what their activity is going to be, and being able to build that top-down architectural pattern to be able to show the threat scenarios and the threat outcomes, and mapping those back to prevent, detect, respond strategies is how we're making those pictures and explaining that at an executive level. Unfortunately, ADP takes security seriously. We have we have a great security program, and our executives support us from the top down. So it's a good place to be with regards to a career in security, to have an organization that really believes in it and supports it. So
even organizations that don't, I think they have this notion that, well, our network's so big, it would take attackers so much time to map everything and find where the good stuff is, and that's certainly, as we've seen by exploiting Active Directory, cuts down on that investigative time significantly.
Yeah, and the fact that the tools are, a lot of the tools that these guys are using are, Microsoft's own tools, right? Yep. ProcDump, for example, right? What's the first thing a bad guy does when he gets on your workstation? Is he dumps LSAS, runs off with the memory that he's carved out, runs it through Mimikatz, comes back with the password, and you're done, right? Now he's got access to all the file shares on your network, the SQL databases. I mean, it's game over at that point. So, if you're not looking at Active Directory and you're not looking at protecting the places that are of greatest value to a criminal, then you're not doing yourself justice, and you're leaving a massive treasure trove of information for criminals to use against you unprotected. And that roadmap that we talked about is it really is. It's probably I wouldn't even call it a roadmap. I'd call it more an amazing GPS that you can just punch in, and the vehicle is the credentials that you're capturing and using those to be able to drive all over these organizations. And when you can wind up capturing domain admin, it's every server, it's every application, it's everything in the organization. And that's really what these criminals are after. And one of the few companies that are out there today that really recognizes this is Javelin, and they've created a solution really that is focused on making sure this type of lateral movement isn't happening inside of an organization. And I think that's a great segue into introducing Almog, who's the co-founder and the chief product officer for Javelin. I think he's got a demo that he can even show us of how this technology works.
Yeah, and I like what you said, Jay, when you talked about how attackers are using tools and doing all the memory stealing. And I think, Almog, what you're going to kind of open up with is some new advances in that to make it even more automated for attackers when we talk about Empire and a new tool called DeathStar. And Empire.
And there is a link to the show notes to DeathStar.
Empire. And it escapes me, his Bytebleeder's blog as well. So, Almog, please continue.
Sure. Thank you very much, Vijay. Obviously, I totally agree.
You might be a little biased.
So DeathStar is just one example of an automated cool project that's being done by Mr. Salvati. There is another one that recently released called Go Fetch, and it goes about the same concept where he's trying to leverage Bloodhound and Empire platforms in order to do this red team operation automatically. And to be honest,
I'm sorry, for our listeners that aren't familiar with PowerShell Empire, for example, could you just at a couple sentences describe what that tool does for an attacker?
Definitely. So Empire was released a few years ago about Will and the other guys from Varys Group, where they're trying to make the red team life much easier. So it's about the ability to do post-exploitation, social engineer internally in order to penetrate and to do all this red team operation very easily for anyone to use. So basically, DeathStar is trying to leverage this REST API of Empire and to automate this entire process by just taking the information automatically from this suite. And Go Fetch, for example, is another great example where they're taking the information from Bloodhound and automated the entire red team by using Empire. So I want to start by just before going to the DeathStar and go after this cool example. I want to simplify things by showing you what is why Javelin is so effective against this APT and all post-exploitation hacking. What we are seeing right now on the screen, on the left side is a Bloodhound data where Javelin is already installed. And on the right side, we see Bloodhound without Javelin. So the idea is to simplify and to emphasize why Javelin is so important and so effective against this red team. On the left side, we see a network with Javelin, and on the right side, we see without. And what you're seeing in terms of data is this specific query is about gathering all the domain admins from the network. And on the right side, we are seeing the same query, but without Javelin, you are seeing much less information. So the entire Javelin, the first concept for Javelin is to obfuscate the entire Active Directory information and to give the attacker a false information about the Active Directory network, so the information gathering would be failed. Another cool example that we can leverage Bloodhound to explain this stuff is just to query the Neo4j database. And you can see immediately the difference between a network where you have Javelin and where you don't have Javelin. You have much less information without Javelin, and any obfuscated data would make the attacker make any decision a failure. So Bloodhound just make my life easier to explain customer what their network would look like before and after. It's just a great way to visualize stuff and to show this obfuscated data using the customer information. So it really makes sense. It would really take his network data and show with Javelin and without Javelin.
Nice.
So going back to this DeathStar project, I'm going to demonstrate what would happen if a red teamer or even an automated project like DeathStar would try to launch his attack against the network. What would happen and what Javelin would catch him. Let's do it. So right now,
the password was 1234, right?
Yeah.
Something like that, yeah.
ASDF.
Yeah.
PASSWRD.
This is the Empire platform where I launched it using a REST API. So the DeathStar Python script can use that REST API to automate the entire procedure. So the nice thing is that almost everything is automated and is very cool. And as I mentioned before, I'm sure that in most network, this kind of attack would definitely work. So from this point, we are seeing the listener that the DeathStar project already created automatically by the REST API. And all we need to do is basically just create our stager, take the Powershell base64 data and push it inside the domain user inside one of the endpoint in the organization.
So in in DeathStar, you created a payload essentially or a PowerShell script that you executed on a domain-connected computer with a domain user with non-domain admin privileges, right?
Exactly. So I took this payload which Empire created, and the one that automated that listener and that pre-configured PowerShell payload is by using DeathStar.
Okay.
So once this agent is active, the entire procedure from DeathStar point of view is going to query and to do stuff against this this Empire platform. So imagine you have like an HTTPS SSL tunnel between the DeathStar and the Empire platform, where the DeathStar just making a commands using this REST API. So in the background right now, the DeathStar is right now doing some reconnaissance. Is trying to find admins. Is trying to find much more data about the network. And we would see in a few more seconds, we would see how Javelin is going to detect this kind of activity. So I made, before this lab, I made this mic user also a local admin, so we can do some privilege escalation.
Nice.
But again, it can't go beyond this context. The idea is that Javelin, in the context of local privilege escalation, Javelin lets you do almost anything. But in the context of Active Directory, we are preventing from the attacker to model the network, to get the right information from the network, and then during this bad modeling, the attacker would definitely fail. So in a few seconds, I will show you the alerts.
So it's running right now. So there's a payload from Empire running, and that payload is, I'm sorry, talking to Empire and being automated by DeathStar through an API to Empire. Is that correct?
Exactly.
Yes.
The DeathStar is talking to the Empire, and the Empire as agents talking to the actual endpoint.
Gotcha.
So we have compromised endpoint, the Windows 10, which is talking to the Empire.
Yep. And then Empire is being controlled through a REST API via DeathStar.
Right.
Exactly.
And so you could put each of those in its own container. Never mind.
Yes, you could.
Then you'd have container problems.
But you know what? You probably shouldn't use Docker anymore because that's old school.
That's old school.
Yep.
Sorry. Go ahead.
You needed Kubernetes.
That's right.
Seriously.
Then you managed all the Kubernetes cluster. Right.
Right.
Go ahead,
You need a
Almog.
Federation of Kubernetes. Never mind.
So to complete this demo, in the background, the DeathStar is trying to do some more stuff, but because he can't really use the domain admins in the network, he's just thinking that he can use the domain admin. Javelin immediately detect it, and for this specific demo, he failed both on the reconnaissance phase where he's trying to learn the network. So you see all this reconnaissance information from this Windows 10. This is the Windows 10 where the Empire agent was launched, and he's trying to reconnaissance the network. And we have much more information using the forensics information, where you can see specifically that this was launched by using a Powershell agent. We know about this activity. We know that this was a lateral movement and recon kind of activity. And this is just the analysis from the memory. We are doing much more information in terms of file system activity. We even have a shim cache information. We can go to a process list where we can find this encoded PowerShell agent, this base64 agent using the process list. So basically, we are completing the image by giving the security guys the forensics report that needed to understand exactly what happens in their network. So this is just one alert where the attacker launched the reconnaissance, and we also identify an overpass dash, which is a credential theft attempt using an obfuscated data. So this, for example, this user considered to be a domain admin by the DeathStar, but actually Javelin obfuscated that user to only be considered as domain admin, where in reality it's just a domain user, and you can't really do a lateral movement. And so once the attacker tried to use that user and use Mimikatz and whatever it's trying to use to pass the hash, we identify this Mimikatz activity. We know that it's being used to be tried and use this lateral movement. We have some pre-configured rules that we are doing in this malware analysis report. And as I was mentioning before, we have plenty more data in this forensics about file system and process and everything needed to understand this attack. So basically, the DeathStar is trying to tell the Empire, please do the reconnaissance, please do the credential theft. Empire is doing the actual process and is giving the response back to the DeathStar. But because this is an obfuscated data using Javelin, obviously the attack failed, and we identified this activity immediately. So everything is being done, even for red team, whether it's manual or it's an automated procedure. The first step is to model the network, to gather information as much as it can. And if you are failing to model the network right, the rest of the attack would going and fail, because everything is lying on the information you
So
gathered.
Almag, from an attacker's perspective, do they think that something is going horribly wrong, or do they think that like some stuff is working, or do they like not know what to think because it just looks weird?
Yeah, so this is a good question, because the default configuration for Javelin is not to remove the current infrastructure. Some of, for example, if you talk the local admin traversal, it might succeeded for some computers,
Right.
but in general, the attempt for the other current Joule would definitely fail. The idea is to make them think that the obfuscated data is much more important and interesting than the current layer of data.
I gotcha.
So we are trying to lure them into our obfuscated data and to make this much more interesting.
Right. But now on a different phase in the detection side, in the Javelin console, I mean, it's lighting up like a Christmas tree, and you see very clearly that there are attacks happening.
Exactly. Because we are using a deception approach, because we are obfuscating the environment, it's very deterministic. It's not like you can have a false positive in this system, unlike any log system or machine learning, where it's very behavioral understanding. In Javelin concept, we are using a deceptive approach where any object is not legitimate, and normal user in the organization shouldn't be using these objects at all. So it's not supposed to be this kind of activity, and this is why we have the advantage to have zero false positive and to be very deterministic in the context of detection. And we don't have the screen yet, but we also are adding in the next few days, we're also adding the mitigation option, where you can, for example, kill this Powershell process immediately from this screen. It's already 80% completed, but
Nice.
it's just a UI issue.
So even if the attacker manages to get some valid credentials, they've triggered so many alerts by acting on the deceptive data that an analyst is going to see that and go, oh, that's bad, just kill that process and stop the attack before it's able to traverse inside of the network and spread.
Yep.
Exactly. The mitigation options would go very widely, meaning that we are going to allow the security guys to kill processes, to isolate the Windows machine from the network, to disable any configuration from the Active Directory. So it's going to be much configuration in the UI, so the security guys can basically isolate the endpoint from the network totally.
That's fantastic. I love it. I find it kind of ironic that in this kind of cheesy, right? But the Active Directory is sort of like your DeathStar, except it has multiple exhaust ports.
And much bigger. They're
They're
a lot easier to target womp rats
That's right.
than womp rats.
That's right. So it's funny that the attack tool is called DeathStar. So that's excellent.
That's great stuff.
J.R. Almag, any concluding thoughts on this process? I thought everything was great. Very well done.
Yeah. I mean, it's scary when you start looking at the the advances in capabilities like this. The tools that he was showing are great for guys like us who are running red teams, but when you're on the inverse side of that, and you're simply trying to rely on quote unquote next gen tools or technology or enterprise endpoint protection technologies. The reality is those tools can miss stuff, and I'm not saying that those aren't tools or technologies that you don't need, but when you start to look at the rise of PowerShell attacks, instead of using malware, and you start looking at their use of memory injection, process hollowing, atom bombing. I mean, it's unbelievable the advances that these guys are making in fileless malware, and exploit-based detection, exploit-based prevention technologies just aren't going to be the only thing that you're going to be able to rely on in an organization anymore, and you need layered defenses. web shells are another great example of this stuff. When people are just using, single lines of JavaScript and interacting with your servers and workstations through, the command line and utilities that just exist on the endpoints, that's really hard to detect with traditional tools. And when you look at the way Javelin's approaching it, I saw that as a huge gap in the market that no vendor was addressing until now. And the footprints that an attacker generates from these fileless attacks, and by focusing on an Active Directory, when you start looking at it through the lens of a Javelin tool, it's amazing what you can start to detect and how you can start to turn the tables on the adversary and start using their tactics and their techniques to be able to help out them in a network. So it's pretty impressive.
Yeah, no, and I agree with your statements too, right? You don't want to completely abandon some of your other technologies, but certainly there are limitations to every technology, and to have something that can see when something has slipped past all of those, I think is fantastic, and I think Javelin's certainly filling that, that gap very well. So, Almog and Jay, thank you very much for presenting this information. I loved how we put it in context and then showed a demo. Very well done. Thank you both very much.
We appreciate it, guys. Thank you.
Take care. With that, we are going to take a short break, come back, talk about the security news for this week, so stay tuned. Don't go anywhere.